Always when I write is trying to combine what our lives are with what the future holds. And I really got into this in an essential way because I got into nonviolence. I practiced yoga for 40, 50 years. And part of the yoga training is to not kill as much as we kill, not destroy as much as we do. How can you build a more constructive, positive attitude about life rather than being trapped in these patterns? So that sort of led me to ahimsa, it's called in the yoga sense. It's nonviolence, and how cool. And I had the experience. You say psychedelics, friends into psychedelics. I had cosmic experiences with psychedelics, which said you ought to do something worthwhile. You got an education. You ought to put it to serve humanity in a real way. Now I didn't know what that really meant when I got the experience, but part of it was you ought to grow your own food. Why? I don't want poisons on my food. I want poison. I'm really good at poisoning things. I'm a molecular biologist. I know poison genes and one thing after another. They teach you how to poison. I don't want to poison. I want to provide advance of a nonviolent food system for humanity. And then I end up getting cancer also, so I have to deal with how to heal yourself and how to survive. And we actually got lymphoma to go in remission by changing our diet. We did macrobiotic diet, and for 3.5 years the cancer went away. Lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's, went away. And then I went to Mexico and I got another treatment from herbs. It was called the Hoxie. So I did that. 3.5 years, it went away. So for 8-10 years I had gotten, and Nagorny, when I talked to him, he said he'd never seen anybody who used their diet to overcome cancer. And he knew me as a friend, as a colleague, and I did it. 10 years later I went back, I had 2 pounds of tumors all over my body, up, right, all over my face, down under my arms, in my groin, and I walked in, and I had pleurisy. I didn't even know. I walked into his office, and he said, "You're walking dead, man. Tomorrow, I'll meet you in the emergency room." And he pulled out liters of fluid from I had pleurisy.
He said 4 liters in his book.
Yeah.
That's a gallon.
Yeah.
That's a little more than a gallon.
So he'd never seen anything like it. So the story of him writing the book about the case was one of the case. But and then later on he described, he put the stuff in. So what he does is, like anybody who has a bacterial infection, if you have cancer, you put it in tissue culture and you do an apoptosis assay. You put a screen of what's known to cause the cells to die. And he did that. And he said, let's do this. First treatment, 60-70% of the tumors went down, 70% first round of chemo. So that was really I almost died from it, though, because I had so much. I got the syndrome. You get an allergic reaction and I got an allergic reaction. I went into anaphylactic shock, and they just grabbed me. Anyway, I've recovered and survived all these different things, so I know what your friend goes through when they're always putting stuff in your veins.
Well, I say the chemo is what kills people in a lot of cases. I mean, is that your belief, or
no?
No,
it has to do with the right chemo. If you have, if there are several different morphotypes or genotypes of breast cancer,
mm-hmm.
and you don't do an assay of the tumors in the breast to find out which one of the, or you don't do a genomic assay to find out what it is, then the way you treat it won't work. You got to have a treatment that goes with the kind of cancer, exactly, and the particular kind of cancer.
Sure.
So that's what you do with an in vitro assay. You take some of the cells, you put them in tissue culture, and then you check out if it's breast cancer. We know this works 25% of the time, and this works 35% of the time, and this works 15% of the time. So we try all those in culture, and then we see, oh, isn't it interesting, this particular person's breast cancer, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, but this, which is, Nagorny talks about in his book, here's a thing that you could have used for lung cancer, you found out, oh, maybe I should use it for pancreatic cancer, and what it does, it works. So you need in vitro tests to figure out what works, not just the generic solution. You need specific data on each person's cancer, and everybody's cancer is different. So that kind of stuff, of knowing enough science. And he set up this, was interesting. Robert set up the assay when I was in, I went to visit a friend, Sheldon Henry's an MD and a friend of Robert's also. And I had a lump in my groin. And he said, well, I'm going to get a biopsy. So I went and got a biopsy. And the biopsy inadvertently was read by Robert Nagorny. he was the chief resident of that hospital at the time. So he read and it triggered him, knowing me already for 10 years or whatever it was, and we've been friends. We had talked molecular biology for 6 hours without stopping. And we both loved science and medicine, and we could talk to one another because we both had hard drives filled with information, so we could talk to one another, all this information, and it goes, comes back to, no, that's, and we would do it for hours and hours and hours. So we really had been allies in helping one another understand more about what's been discovered in molecular biology and what goes on in cancer and nucleic acids. And
pardon me for interrupting.
Oh.
This is despite the fact that he was an allopathic doctor and you had some significant disagreements with chemotherapy approach to cancer.
Exactly.
But a tremendous amount of respect between you, and you were able to help each other.
Exactly. We were able to talk about the stuff, disagree about stuff, and then come to insights about that because we were really interested in learning more medicine and knowing how to. And I didn't like the poison approach. I liked the holistic approach. Right. And here it is. We used the holistic approach, macrobiotics or Hoxsey, and it worked for a while. And when I was dying, I went to Robert and he said, remember what you told me? You told me I'm not going to use any of your fucking poison. And he reminded me, now how do you feel? I said, whatever you said to do, I'll do it. Okay? I can see. He says, you're going to die unless we do this right away. I got to start it tomorrow. I got to do a biopsy, and in 2 days I got to get the data, and the day after that I got to put you on a therapy, or else you're going to die. And he did it, and it went away. It took 6 rounds of treatment, and it was terrible somewhat, but I survived. And what it does is it means that I know when it ever comes back, and it did. It came back 10 years later, and wasn't in my brain, it was in my kidney. It came in my kidney, and they had to take a biopsy, cut your throat and go down and pull out a lymph node from like this, and then put it in culture and find out it's the same cancer I had previously. And they treat it with an upgraded version, and I'm still here to talk to you. I'm 72. I got it when I was 47.
Whoa.
So it's 25 years, right? So at that level, I'm grateful to have a therapy that works. That chemotherapy and radiation I will not tolerate because it doesn't really work. Why? Because most of the cancers, if they're systemic, radiation specific, point specific, you need something that's general, right? That's what good chemotherapy. And Gorney's therapies weren't just one poison. He uses a monoclonal antibody also. So you have a monoclonal antibody plus a specific poison. And when you do it in tissue culture, you can find the lowest possible dose you need to be able to treat the cancer without causing the patient too much terrible discomfort. He does that too, right? So I realized that he said this is lousy treatments, but they work. And if they work, you're alive, right? And if you're alive, it works, right? That's the idea, right? Not to survive it, to outlive it.
Right. And if you're alive, you can continue with your diet and your approach to holistic treatment, correct?
In fact, when we were after the chemotherapy, you feel so bad and so nauseated. You don't know that you want to eat kimchi till you start making your own kimchi and realize fermented vegetables with high amounts of probiotics are really essential for a healthy diet, whether it's yogurt or kimchi or sauerkraut. So those kind of things of direct experience, not somebody told you this, they told you, you tried it, did it work? No, but yes. Figure it out. Keep working on it. The same thing we've been doing with plant breeding. We didn't know how to grow plants, much less do public domain plant breeding. What did it even mean? So in one case, we took someone had a grape tress tomato. A lady in Australia, Rosemary LaCharest, sent me seeds of a tomato called Humboldtii, and it makes 15, 20, 30 flowers, and it makes small cherry tomatoes. So you have a great cluster of tomatoes. And one day, my daughter and I are talking about this, and we have another tomato, a wild species that's 8 feet tall. And so she took the pollen, we both did it, we took the pollen from the 8 foot tall and we put it on the grape tress, and we pulled out a tomato that makes now 100 to 200 flowers on a tress filled up with cherry tomatoes. It was a new architecture for tomatoes, public domain plant breeding. So we can then take red centiflora, red cherry clustered hypertress tomato, and offer it. People buy it and they start to grow it, and it's all over the internet because nobody's seen tomatoes like this. This is original new breeding. I don't have to worry about anybody patenting and owning it. It's already out there. You can't patent and own something that's already been done. It has to be original.
So while we've got this and while we're on that subject, can you define public domain plant breeding just one more time for this?
Public domain plant breeding, you know, my own, I don't have any formal legal training. What I do know is that at a time when they founded all the agricultural schools in every state in the United States, there's an agricultural university where they did breeding for the local farmers, where there wasn't ownership of the crops, but the idea was to bring in crops in the particular area, whether it's the Northwest or the Southeast, and have them succeed there. And that's why we have all these germplasm repositories in different parts of the country, and why you once had public domain plant breeders in every state. So what public domain plant breeding is, working to make new kinds for the basic good of everybody.
Wow. Beautiful.
So that's what, and so when I recognized that before I started, it really got me into it when I was starting to grow seeds organically and sell them as a small piece seeds as a seed company. I wanted to grow sugar snap peas. Sugar snap pea is a good vine, delicious snap pea, green pods. It was a delicious kind. So the company that owned that was Northrop King. And I wrote them a letter and I said, I'd like to grow these organically. Would you give me permission to grow your variety organically? They say, one, no, we won't let you grow them organically, and two, we won't give you permission. Right? No, 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 no. Okay, so I said, well, since at that I know how to do genetics and breeding, I went and I got the English translation of Mendel's paper that he wrote on plant breeding from the 1860s. It was in the 1903 or 2, and I read, and I took the diagram, and here's a picture of him showing you how to unfold the flower and take the pollen and hand pollinate a pea. I went and did it, and I took sugar snap pea and turned it into sugary snap pea.
Nice.
Because I changed it and crossed it to another pea and did a few characteristics different, and I could have our own variety. And I said, wow, this is important. If they're going to make it impossible for people who want to grow organic crops because they own the crops, I better make new varieties for the organic movement. I better get to work and make even not radically different, but just a new tomato, a new lettuce, a new broccoli, a new onion, that are worthwhile cultivars. And eventually you have a whole bunch of organically specific selections that are good for those who do not want to have poison on their food, in their soil, on their water, in their air. And I've been doing that now. And so I made 50 or 60 new varieties in the last 20 years.
And pea seeds was prior to or subsequent to
Seeds of Change.
Seeds of Change. So can you introduce yourself in terms of Seeds of Change, because that's probably how most people, that's a name that a lot of people recognize.
And the reason why I was a co-founder of Seeds of Change is because I wanted to have organic seeds be available nationally to everybody.